Flosstube. Today is Saturday, June 3rd. It's Kate here of Colorblind Cross Stitch, and Neko, who may or may not show up in the video because of course I sat down, so he has to sit on me. No? Okay. That's fine. I have some progress as always. The tiniest of stitchquisitions, because the largest of stitchquisitions happened last week. And Neko, are you eating my patterns? Okay, maybe not. Hopefully not. Neko should not eat my patterns. Sometimes he does because he likes to like gnaw plastic. Or he just lies on them, which is not very helpful. Or he lies on my stitching and I'm like, Neko, there's a needle in that. How is that comfortable? Please don't stab yourself. Yeah. Cats are weird. Cats are weird. But anyway, I figure this week, let's change it up a bit. I think I'm going to start with the smallest of stitchquisitions. Well, actually, last week was also pretty small in terms of... No, that's not true. I was going to say last week was small in terms of stitchquisitions, which it was during my Saturday update, but then Sunday happened, and if you've watched my videos, you'll see I have a video that's like almost entirely fabric because I found the most amazing deal on Kijiji, and it was great. But today, all I got this week after that, all I got was some bobbins. They came in the mail finally, sort of 2 months from China. Interestingly enough, I think these bobbins are a little bit, the plastic's a little bit thinner than the last ones I got, which, I don't know if, I mean, it was someone that looked like they were selling the same thing, but I guess they're slightly thinner, but that's okay. They may also be blue. They might not be, but they may also be blue. But that's just plastic bobbins. I got 100 of them. I'll use them up. Eventually I'm probably going to end up ordering more because this should be enough to finish bobbinating the DMC I have, but I have a whole bunch of anchor floss that's just kind of sitting in a container right now, which for the most part doesn't matter, but when I want to try and find some, then I have to basically like empty out this big container of anchor floss, and there's probably like 100 skeins in there. So it's a little bit of a pain. So yeah, that's bobbins. Alright, stitchquisitions done. Next thing then is some progress. This week, I think I was talking at the end of last week, I wasn't sure what I was going to work on, but I was kind of thinking dragons because my poor Celestial Dragon, actually here, let's take it out of bits. We'll do this, there we go. Then we'll have, well, it's, okay, it's shiny paper, so we might still have glare, but that's, it's a Designworks kit. It's Joan Elliot Dragon. The kit is called Celestial Dragon, but I think I've also seen this labeled as a Crescent Moon Dragon. That's what it will look like when finished. You know what's funny? A lot of the time, like, if I see pictures of space and there's, like, a crescent moon, but the crescent moon has, like, stuff behind it and you can see through the crescent, that really bothers me, even if it's, like a cartoon, not cartoon, but, like, you know, an artistic thing, like, they've drawn, like, a face on the moon or whatever, and it's, like, just the crescent moon, but you can see stuff behind it, and I'm like, but the moon doesn't work that way! But for whatever reason, I think that doesn't bother me nearly as much on this pattern. I think maybe because it's not, like, on, like, a space background, and it's just, like, you know, it's just more like the dragon is sitting on a crescent shape, as opposed to the dragon is specifically sitting on a crescent moon. I feel like the moon isn't really blue either, so, which probably helps with the dragon sitting on a crescent rather than dragon sitting on the moon. Because no matter how much of the moon you see, it's not actually a crescent, it's always a round ball, so you can't see through it. So that's... I have a weird hang-up about space pictures that have crescents that you can see through. But there you go, because yeah, because of how space works. But all that aside, here is, actually, we haven't seen this in a while, so I'm gonna do the cool editing trick, I think, of finding a picture of what it looked like previously, and inserting that here. Because I can do that. I'm pretty sure I have a picture. No, I know I have a picture, I just have to find it. So, this is what I got done. So, I think when you saw it last, my hoop's kind of in the way, but there were just these like swooshes. I'd done sort of these swooshes and I'd started some of this green outlining on some of the swooshes. So what I did first, I put a whole bunch of stitches in on the dragon's neck. So that's the neck. There's like medium green and there's light green and then there's like golds. So this, like, it's called off-white. So this sort of, I don't know, light yellow, off-white, whatever that is basically the end of the dragon's neck. Here in the pattern, there-ish. Because it goes up to there's where you can see where that little like swooshy line will come in and like that. And then there are beads that will go in there when I get to do beading, but I won't be beading until the end. So yes, there's greens and golds, and then so I kind of did that chunk of neck. And then I need to do more of that green when I go back to extending the neck. But then I started on, did another length, most of a length of dark green. So continued sort of outlining those swooshes, and then this is actually basically the shadow under the dragon's wing. This down here is all the body, and then this up here is wings. And so this is where like the wing meets the body, and that's kind of like the shadow. Dark green on the wings. There's lots of, not a lot of like fractionals in the dragon's body. The dragon's, again, I'll show you on this. The face has lots of fractionals, and the claws have lots of fractionals. Conveniently, the moon is in the way of his back feet, so you actually can't see. So I don't have to do fractionals on those feet because you can't see them. So those have lots of fractionals. So there's not like fractional stitches or anything in here, but like all this area in here is a lot of like color changes. So it's not quite sort of like confetti stitching. Really, it's not like single stitches, but there's like, you know, 3 or 4, and then like 3 or 4 of a different color, and then so it's just kind of a bit of a pain. So I was like, I don't want to do the rest of that in there right now, so I went and did this outlining on this wing, and then probably I'll, before I move my hoop again, do that more of the wing. Although, sorry, the wings I think also, they're one of those things. It's actually kind of funny. I think maybe the only thing that is really one color is the crescent moon. But a lot of the dragon, it kind of looks like it should be, oh, that's like one color. And then you start to like look at the pattern and go, no, there's like 5 colors in there, like the wings. Like it looks like maybe there's 1 or 2 colors, but no, I think there's actually like, oh, there's like 3 or 4. There's more colors than I think there should be by looking at the pattern. But then me and colors, so maybe I'm just not seeing them, you know. That's also possible. But either way, that's what I got done. I'm glad I picked this piece up again because I still love it. It's very colorful. I love all the colors. I can't always see the differences in colors. Like these two greens in the neck are pretty close. I can kind of see that they're different, but when I was stitching, I kind of had to do it by counting, because I'm like, I can't quite tell if I put the light green in yet. Things like that. I think there's a couple colors in the swooshes that, like, I know they're different colors because they're different on the pattern, but I can't actually see the difference. But so I can see some of them. Like, I can see that these are like yellowy gold, and like this is a dark green, and I know there's some greens in there, and there were some like purples and pinks. It's a very colorful dragon, so I'm enjoying that. For information, the fabric is just a 14 count Ida. It is the Ida that came in the kit. When it came in the kit, it was white. I think it was my second or third video I talked about. I did some experimenting with dyeing fabric with like tea and jam. So this is actually, it was white. I dyed it with blueberry jam to make it this gray, purple, pink, not quite white that it is, because I kind of was looking at the pattern and I was like, I know that like cool colored fabrics exist now. I don't want to do it on white. So I was having like fabric quandaries, and then I tried dyeing it and I'm like, that's better. I'll do it on blueberry. So that is my Joan Elliot Dragon on blueberry fabric. I may or may not continue working on that. I haven't decided yet, because I have plans for a couple new starts. I know I was just talking last week, about how I was really happy that I was down to like 3 whips and they were sort of nicely different, and that was great. Now I have plans for a couple new starts, so I kind of, that didn't hold very well. Oh no, this goes to this. This goes to this. So, the first one has a bit of a story behind it. So my person gave me this suggestion, and has actually been helping me with designing the pattern. He did most of the pattern design. So what it is, so wait, I need to back up a bit. The story, the sort of like background on this is, there is a charity called Child's Play. I think it was actually originally started by the guys who do like the Penny Arcade webcomic. But the guys who do the Penny Arcade webcomic also went, okay, we started this charity, that's great, we're gonna make it its own thing though, because we're not always the greatest guys, so we don't want like the charity to get like, we want our charity to be awesome because we feel really importantly about it, even if, we don't always, we're just a couple of guys, we don't always do, we're not always super amazing, and we don't want that to like splash on this project that we want to be super amazing. So they split that off into its own thing. So Child's Play, it was started by the Penny Arcade guys, but it is sort of its own thing now. And what it is, it's a charity to donate to children's hospitals, or like the children's ward in hospitals, specifically to give the children who are, in the hospital, things to do. It started with video games, because, that's kind of the guys from Child's Play are like big not the guys from Child's Play. The guys from Penny Arcade who started it are big video gamers, and they were like, hey, children who are stuck in hospital and are super bored because they have nothing to do, let's like donate some video games to them so they, have something to do while they're sitting in hospital, being treated. I think now it's sort of expanded to just things for children to do in hospital, which, like, I can definitely definitely relate to and support, not because I've never been in hospital. I've never actually been in hospital overnight, thank goodness. But when I was in high school, my brother ended up having an extended stay in hospital. And I remember him talking about, like, sometimes he was just, like, super bored. It was funny because he would do his schoolwork because he literally had nothing else to do. And, like, I would bring it back to, like, our teachers, because obviously he was, you know, he was in hospital, he wasn't going to school. And they'd be like, oh, wow, look, he did his work. I'm so, like, we're so proud of him. And I'm like, no, actually, he's just doing, like, his schoolwork because he literally has nothing else to do. Like, he did schoolwork and practiced the piano and phoned people. I don't even think he bothered having a TV. Wait, maybe he did have a TV. I don't remember. I think it was extra. So I think it was like TV or phone. And he had the phone. Unfortunately, my brother is almost totally blind, so I don't know how much video games would have helped relieve his boredom in hospital. By the same token, I do know that also my niece had an extended stay in hospital when she was only 6 months old. So that was not a super happy fun time. She was a 6-month-old baby, so she wasn't super bored. She was just, you know, a baby. Probably kind of cranky because she didn't always feel super great. But I know that at least her dad, when you know, he was staying in hospital with her, because of course she always had to have at least one parent. I think her mom also stayed in hospital with her a lot when she was admitted. And so he would, you know, when he was sort of like sitting around in hospital just like watching the baby, would borrow, at that point they had, I think, a GameCube and some games, or like an Xbox, and so he would borrow the GameCube or the Xbox and like sit and play video games while he was, like, you know, watching his daughter who was sleeping or, you know, hanging out, being a baby. So that kind of thing, actually, like, I understand how it can actually really help people. I mean, obviously, Crystal's dad is not a kid. He was just watching the baby, and I feel like something like video games, you know, would be useful for adults in hospital as well. But this charity happens to focus specifically on children, and on finding children things to do while they're admitted. And I think that's a pretty cool kind of thing. Like, I appreciate that. My person has been sort of following this probably for a few years, and every year, this Child's Play charity has an event where they're raising money for Child's Play by playing this video game, and it's called Desert Bus for Hope. The video game is called Desert Bus. The whole, like, week-long event is Desert Bus for Hope. And what they do is apparently this is, like, the most boring video game in existence, because you drive a bus across a desert, and, like, nothing happens. You're just driving a bus across a desert, like, endless desert, and you're just driving this bus. I have no idea why someone made that. It's completely pointless. So, they have a group of people who basically are trying to constantly play this video game for, like, a week, like, night and day, and I think they switch off. And they're, like, streaming it. And they have, like, special guests, and they have things like that. And they're trying to raise money for this Child's Play charity. One of the things they do is they have a silent auction, and they have, like, raffles and things, you know, so you can bid on items, and the money that you bid goes, like, straight to the charity, and then you get cool stuff. And it's a lot of, like, video game themed stuff, or, like, comics themed stuff, or just, you know, general, like, nerdy stuff, because that's the audience that this charity and this Desert Bus for Hope thing is catering to, because, you know, it started with people who were big gamers, and it grew up in that sort of community, and it's like, you know, getting things, specifically video games very often, for children. So, you know, it's all sort of like, there's a lot of like video game related stuff in there. But, so my person has done, I think he like a couple years ago, like donated his time to like help them program something, because he's a computer programmer, by trade. And so we were talking, probably like Christmas time. And, you know, when I had kind of like been, you know, for about a year, been sort of like doing cross stitch in a big way. And it was, you know, Christmas, probably like driving home from like seeing our families for Christmas, you know, and he was kind of like, hey, wouldn't it be cool if, you know, we could do, or you know, you could like cross stitch something, and donate it to the, like, you know, Desert Bus for Hope for their raffle and, you know, raise a couple $100s for charity. And I was kind of like, yeah, I guess, but like, would they want anything that I had done? Like, it didn't, like, I was just like kind of skeptical, but, I looked into it, you know, when I got home, and there have actually been a couple cross-stitch projects. I only looked at sort of like, they had, like, the website had sort of like, here are the things that were auctioned off, you know, in our last Desert Bus sort of like week. I think it's in October or November is when they do it. I'll link the Desert Bus Child's Play charity website below so that you can check it out, if that's the thing you're interested in. I think they do it in October is when they do their week-long, you know, Desert Bus playing thing. So I looked, and actually last year someone did an amazing, like, cross-stitch embroidery project that was like the, you know, like the old school, like Mario, like, you know, NES, like original Mario, like the first world, they'd kind of basically taken like the screen and, you know, converted it to a cross-stitch pattern and did sort of like, not the entirety of World 1, because that would have been, you know, like 10 feet long or something ridiculous, or even longer. But they did sort of like, it was a tapestry, and it took sort of like parts of that sort of World 1 map, not map, but like the screen that you see as like Mario goes along, you know, from like where you start, and, you know, you get like your first mushroom, and then you go, and then there's like, you know, they put in like a thing in the middle where you can like, you know, fall down, and like they were like, and they did it on like 1/1 on like 28 count, or like even 32 count or something. They did it ridiculously small, basically so that they could do like a 1-to-1 pixel to stitch ratio for what you would have seen on the screen when you were playing that game. It was amazing, and I think they did it in like, they had like cross stitches and half stitches and maybe a couple other different kinds of stitches. No like back stitching, because it was the sort of like the pixel art of the like Mario screen. So, you know, you don't have black outlines on like the, you know, 8-bit Mario. And I saw that and went, oh my god, this thing is amazing. I think it sold for like a couple $1,000s in like the auction, or like $1,500 or something. But that's totally understandable, because it must have taken this person just like months to do this. It was like 1/1, and it was like 5 feet by like 2 feet or something. And I was just like, oh my god, those stitches would be tiny. That would take forever. Amaze. Yeah, I'm not doing anything nearly so amazing, because my cross-stitch skills do not extend to 1/1 on like anything smaller than 28 count, and that is only for like tiny pieces. I couldn't do a whole piece 1/1 on 28 count. I would like die. My eyes would just like give up, and it would not be fun. But yeah, and there were like a couple other like smaller cross-stitch pieces, so like I kind of looked at that and went, okay, you know, people do submit cross-stitch for the Desert Bus charity to be like auctioned off or raffled or things, so that's actually a doable thing. So my person and I started brainstorming and came up with an idea to do sort of like a sort of tapestry kind of like cross-stitch piece that has like the heroes from a bunch of video games and the villains from a bunch of video games, kind of like they're about to like crash into each other. So I was like, okay, I can stitch that. That'd be cool. My design skills are not up to making that design. So my person, for the past 3 or 4 months, on and off when he has some time, has been working on putting together this design, which I will insert a picture of the finished design here. It has the, like I said, the heroes and villains of a bunch of video games. I think we have half a dozen, 8 or so on our final project. We started with more than that, and then it was kind of crowded for the amount of, tapestry that I could stitch in a reasonable amount of time. And so we kind of went with games that we both know and love, and then a couple games that are just like sort of really iconic or popular. So like there's Mario and Bowser from Super Mario World. There's Link and Ganondorf from the Zelda games. There's like Sonic the Hedgehog and Dr. Robotnik. There is 2 of the characters from Undertale, which actually neither of us have played yet, but it's supposed to be like a really amazing game, and super fun. And then, what else is there? There were 2 characters from Street Fighter, whose names I don't know because I've never really played Street Fighter. I've probably tried a couple times and mashed buttons with more or less success. Probably less. I'm not very good at those sorts of games, sometimes I'm better, sometimes I'm worse, depending on how effectively I mash buttons. And then there was, let me think, who else is in this? Who am I missing? Oh, right. Samus and Ridley from Super Metroid. Ridley is just a head because he's kind of really big, but I really wanted to stitch Ridley. Because Super Metroid and like the Metroid sort of games are like one of my very favoritist games of all time. And then we have Mega Man and evil dude from Mega Man. I don't remember his name because I never got very far in Mega Man. I just died a lot. And that might be it. Oh right, and then the companion cube and the gun turret from Portal, because Portal is one of our favorite, like Chris and I, both of us love the Portal games. And then there's a Pikachu and a Snorlax. Snorlax isn't really evil. He's on the villain side though, mostly just because like Chris just liked the idea of having like the sleeping Snorlax just kind of like somewhere, and I'm like, that's cool. And then Pikachu, and like Pokemon is like really sort of pretty iconic video games. And then there's also Claptrap from the Borderlands games, just because the Borderlands games are awesome. There's no Borderlands villain because we couldn't fit it in. I think that's everyone. Originally we had also thrown in like Halo people, and we were thinking of putting in like Star Fox, Fox McCloud, and probably a couple other people, but it was just really crowded. So that's the original picture. So Christopher did the design, sort of like put it together, and got them all arranged because he has greater Photoshop skills than I do. I, however, have since sat down and sort of tweaked the design and to make it into a cross-stitch pattern. I'm going to throw my mock-up of the pattern here. So I did things like in the original, like the clouds and hills, had a lot of, like where like the the sky and the clouds met, or like where the hills and the cloud or the hills and the sky met, there was like actually some different colors, which is just silly. It's just like an artifact of the way that picture is, kind of thing. So like, didn't need any of those, so I got rid of, like, you know, smoothed out the outlines of like the hills and the clouds. I figured out how to, actually I learned, I did this all in a program called C-Stitch, which I really like, mostly because it is free, which is awesome. It doesn't do backstitching, unfortunately. It just does full cross. Just like pixel art. It turns pixel art into patterns. And the way I've used it previously is to do basically my art in some kind of graphics program. Chris did all of this one in Photoshop because that's what he happens to have. I've done a couple patterns, my dragon sampler, for example. I did that, put it together in the GIMP, which is kind of like, it's sort of made to do what Photoshop does, but it's free. It's all open source. It's not quite as powerful as Photoshop, but it's actually pretty good. For, you know, I mean, like, for an open source, like, completely free program, it's pretty great. And then, like, I'll just, you know, feed it into C-Stitch to get a pattern out. This time, and actually this week, because Chris finished the design last weekend, I believe, or maybe the week, sometime middle of the week last week. So this time I actually figured out how to do things like edit my pattern in C-Stitch, so I could do things like, it actually has a cool feature where you can tell it to, okay, if this color only appears in like 5 pixels, match it to sort of like the closest color that appears in more pixels than that, and then change it. So I could get rid of colors that, you know, like, oh, there's 1 stitch of this color. Well, that's dumb. I'm not buying a color to do 1 stitch. And then I figured out how to edit in the program so I could, like, smooth out the hills and the clouds, and so to make it sort of nice. And then there was also, for example, there were 3 colors of white when the original picture was, like, when C-Stitch tried to, like, make the original picture into, like, DMC. There was no need for there to be 3 colors of white. They did not add anything to the pattern at all. So I changed those all into 1 color of white, and there was like 3 colors of black. I think in this case the black was like, the whites were like white, B5200, and then like winter white or something, which I don't even remember what that is. The DMC color for that one was, and then the blacks were like 310, and then there was like 3370 or 3371 or something, which is like super dark black brown, and then there was another one, and it was like, well, these ones they're all being black. They're all doing black, basically. For example, one of the things we set out to do when Chris was designing it to be like, okay, I'm going to put a black outline around all of the sprites to sort of make them fit together more, because like when we found them, from basically the various different video games, I'm not even sure where Chris got all the sprites from, because he did that part. And some of them had outlines and some of them didn't. And we sort of like went, okay, we can do this, and then they'll all have outlines, but like when I pulled the picture into C-Stitch, some of those outlines were in 310, some of those outlines were in like 3371, or whatever the like dark black brown is, and then some of them were in like a 3rd color, and I'm like, well, that's just silly. They're all being black. Let's just blackify all of them. So it started with like 70 DMC colors, and my final pattern has like 55 or 56 DMC colors. So now that you've seen the mock-up of the pattern, and I've just talked to you for a whole bunch of time, yesterday I finished my tweaking of the pattern, and pulled fabric for it. This is 16 count Fiddler's Cloth, Ida, from my wonderful fabric stash. Having a fabric stash is amazing, you guys. I love it. And this, actually, it turns out, will fit our sort of like tapestry. with a 2-inch border, pretty much exactly. And it's going to be a full coverage piece. And actually, how I'm going to do it is to do the various like video game sprites in full crosses, and then do the background, like the hills and the ground and the sky and the clouds. Do all of that in half crosses. Which what I'm hoping that will do is, one, it will take me half the time to stitch the background, and the background is like the biggest part. You know, it just happens most of this pattern is background. And secondly, I'm hoping what it will do, and this is what I'm given to understand doing like backgrounds and half cross sort of like achieves, is it will make the sort of the sprites, the foreground items, stand out more, which is what I want. The pattern is more about these sort of like video game, you know, sprites, these characters coming together, and the poor Moogle in the middle going, ah! Which is just fun. And being like, you know, they're coming together, they're about to basically like crash into each other in, I don't know, you know, in a big altercation. Poor Moogle in the middle is just like, ah! Moogles are from Final Fantasy. I actually don't know quite what they look like. I haven't actually played much of the Final Fantasy games, although they are my person's like favorite. Are like Final Fantasy. So I'm a little sad no chocobos made it into the pattern though. I wanted to stitch weird chicken horses. Because chocobos are just they're just cute like chicken horses. They fulfill the roles of like chickens and horses, and they're like, they look like chickens. Like cartoon chickens. They're like yellow with like orange beaks, but they are horse-sized and you ride around on them. So, adorable chicken horses. But none of the adorable chicken horses made it into this pattern. But there is a Moogle, so I will stitch a Moogle. So yeah, I'm going to put it on this cloth. It's going to be full coverage, so the fact that this is whatever color it is doesn't matter. It just happens that this fabric is literally the exact size to do it with a 2-inch border. So that's what I'm gonna do, because it saves me buying a bigger piece of fabric, which is what I would have to do otherwise. Or potentially put it on my really nice piece of Storm Ida from Crosswing Collection, which I don't want to do because I want to stitch something else on that. Possibly save the stitches, even though I had said that I wasn't going to do that one. It might actually look really pretty on that Storm Ida, and it would actually be big enough. Although I think save the stitches is fractionals in it, so doing it on a 14 count might be a bad idea. I don't know, I'm not doing anything with that yet, but this is going to be, this is 16 count fiddler's cloth. I am going to put my tapestry on this one. Yesterday I went and sort of looked through my inventory to see what colors I had. Turns out I have about half the colors I need. Some of them are currently in with my Teresa Wensler, so I'm not going to like pull them from my Egyptian sampler to put them with this one. I do need to pull the other colors which I have, and maybe start that soon. I'm not sure though, because like colors that I am definitely missing are like all the colors I need for the hills and ground, and the color I need for the sky. And I need multiple skeins of those ones, even though I'm doing them in half crosses. That's still, like it's still going to be like a 28 by 16 or something stitching area. I think it was like 30 by 18 on 14 count, but this is 16 count, so it's going to be a little bit smaller. So yeah, that is that. So I might, because I know I have black, and black is one of the other colors, and I have white, one of the other colors that comes up a lot. So I might start stitching like the outlines for the sprites. Like start from the middle and start doing the outlines for the sprites, because they're all black, and like filling that in. I'm not sure though, because the other thing is, so I finished the pattern, right? The pattern is 72 pages. I'm not printing out 72 pages. So I don't know if I want to maybe print out the pages that have sprites on them, or if that might just get confusing because I won't have all the other pages, or if I'm going to do it from my computer. I have to pull colors and see what colors I have that aren't with my Teresa Wensler, because I think about out of the colors I have, I think half of them are with my Teresa Wensler and the other half are just somewhere amongst either my DMC or Anchor. I have most of them are DMC. I have a couple that are conversions from Anchor colors. That should work anyway, because most colors only have like a couple hundred stitches at most. Some of them are even like, there's 20 stitches. One I think is 12. I think the color with the smallest amount of stitches is like 12 stitches. I got rid of all the colors that were less than 10. Because what it is like the background is very easy, very simple. That's like, I think the hills and ground are like 4 colors. The sky is 1 color, and then there are clouds. And that's all half stitch. And that should go very quickly because it's all just like big swaths of color. And then the sprites are, on the other hand, the sprites are kind of complicated. They're still full crosses. There's no like fractional stitches or anything. I can't actually do fractional stitches in C-stitch even if I wanted to. And they're meant to be kind of like 8-bit pixel art. You know, that is kind of the feeling we were going for. You know, that sort of like retro gaming, sort of like pixel art, 8-bit sort of thing. So they'd be full crosses anyway, but they're all comparatively fairly complex. Some of them have like some areas that are, you know, chunks, but a lot of them have a lot of, you know, areas. It's like, oh, there's 3 or 4 stitches of this color, and there's 1 stitch of that color, and there's like a couple stitches of this other color, kind of thing. So the sprites are going to be pretty complicated to do. Like they're not complicated in terms of like kinds of stitches or whatever, because it's all full crosses, but in terms of how many stitches, it's going to be like a whole lot closer to doing sort of confetti stitching kind of deal, just because there's going to be lots of different colors in a small area. So that's the thing I want to do. That's the thing I'm thinking about starting, but I'm not sure when, because I'm not sure if I have enough colors to make it practical, or if I should wait until I have the background colors. Because if I'm doing the sprites, I'm going to be doing a lot of like counting. Okay, this sprite goes here. I'm counting this many stitches, and this sprite goes here, and I don't know how well that will work. But at the same time, none of the sprites touch. So if like one of them is like a pixel off because I counted wrong, it's not going to really matter. So I'm not sure. But that's that project. That's the backstory for that project. We'll see what happens with that. So then, one more thing, if we aren't already sick of me talking, I was watching Flosstube this morning with my breakfast, like I do. I tend to do that most mornings while I'm like, you know, getting ready for the day, eating breakfast. I'll put on a Flosstube video. So this morning I was watching Robert Fry? I can't remember exactly his last name, but it's Robert, and I think his Flosstube channel is now Robert's Palace of Stitching, or like Robert's Palace of Cross Stitch or something. Because he used to just have his Flosstube was his name, and then he changed it. So I was watching him this morning, like you do. Actually, it might have been this afternoon, because I slept in a lot today. Yeah, this afternoon I was having my breakfast. Whatever. Breakfast is the first meal of the day regardless of what time of day it is. Damn it. And it is Saturday, so I'm allowed to sleep in. But whatever time it was, I was watching Robert's Palace of Stitching. I will link his channel below so you can check him out, because, you know, you totally should. And he mentioned Connie G's Rainbow Sal, which I had seen before and kind of went, oh, that's kind of cool, that'd be fun to do, but I'm not going to buy fabric for it because that's going to cost money and I have other things I want to stitch, and so I'll leave it, you know, leave it, and that's cool, but whatever, maybe I'll come back to it later or something. So that's what I did. But Robert of Robert's Palace of Stitching, or Palace of Cross Stitch, whatever, okay, dude was stitching this Rainbow Sal, which reminded me that it existed. He actually hasn't gotten very far. He's done, like, some of the border and some of the first motif. But that reminded me that it was a thing that existed that I had wanted to stitch previously. And then I went, hey, I have floss and fabric for this now. I don't have to worry about buying a piece of fabric. I have all the pieces of fabric now. I can just pull fabric for it. And, you know, I don't have necessarily the exact colors that are called for, but I have lots of different colors of floss. In fact, I have this whole thing of floss that is, you know, unlabeled that I could just use. So then I was like, let's do the thing. So I pulled 2 pieces of fabric. They're both grays. The lighter one is platinum and the darker one is pewter. Pewter and platinum. I'm not sure which one I want to use. I'm sort of leaning towards the platinum because I think maybe the colors will show up better on it, but I haven't exactly decided what colors I want to use. But now I am seriously considering starting Connie G's Rainbow Sal, even though I am like 6 months behind, but it's a free sal. So free stitch along, I don't have to worry about paying for the pattern. I no longer have to worry about paying for the fabric because, look, I have fabric. I could also do it on like an ivory or a white, but I like the idea of doing it on one of the grays. And I have ye old floss box of unlabeled flosses. A lot of them aren't full skeins, but I do have, for example, I have a couple purples. I'm sort of thinking of doing it in like purples and blues, which actually, no wait, those are pinks. Purples and blues. I think this is my blue row, and then this was my purple row. And then I think this and that was pink, because there were lots of pinks. And then those were greens, and then that was yellows, and then reds. I gotta check with someone before I choose colors, to make sure that the colors are what I think they are. Because colors aren't always what I think they are. And then I have a couple, bigger bobbins that I haven't pulled out, that are also unlabeled. I think I have a couple yellow ones, maybe a green one, a couple blue ones. They just didn't fit in this box. That I think those bobbins I think have probably more than one skein on them, like 1 or 2. They're pretty thick. They're currently in one of my other boxes. Not in a floss box because they don't fit in a floss box, because they're also on bigger bobbins because there's more floss for them. So I was thinking I could do something, you know, like just pull colors from my box O colors and probably do it in shades of blue and purple because I love me some blue and purple. Do 2/1 on 16 count. I believe both of these are 16 count. 16 count? Yes, 16 count. So I do it on one of these grays. Both of them are big enough. I'm leaning towards the platinum, but I'm not sure. And then do, you know, some of these flosses. I have actually maybe not so many blues. Well, no. I could do a circle in that blue. That would be enough. Although, I think that one would get lost. Oh no. Maybe not. Might get lost in the darker. I'm not sure. And then I have quite a few, sort of purples. You know. Actually Might be a blue. Purpley blue? I'm not sure about that one. Or there's like this one. So I could do one in that one. That one has enough. The squares are like 60 by 60 and they're like lines, so you probably could have enough to do that. You know, that one would do enough. That's probably a skein. Actually, it's probably more than a skein, because I think this one is actually, this one I happen to know is Anchor because I got it off of a skein. Actually, like a 2 skeins. I think there's roughly 2 skeins in there. I measured it. It's a beautiful dark purple. Because I had originally thought of using this for my dragon cell, but there was not enough of it. And this is actually an old Anchor color. My first attempt at drawing an Anchor was terrible. So I remember that was an old Anchor color, and I'm not sure if it has a new Anchor. Can't remember if it has a new Anchor equivalent. If it does, it's marked in my it's marked in my inventory. Because when I inventory my floss, I try to put Anchor numbers and then DMC numbers, and so I had a bunch of like old Anchor colors. They must have changed. They changed their color scheme or their numbering scheme back in like the 70s or something. So yeah, this floss is older than I am. Actually, most of this box is probably older than I am, because these unlabeled flosses, some of them might be thrift store finds. Most of them came from my grandpa. My grandpa used to embroider when he was alive. And when he died, apparently he just had tons and tons and tons of embroidery floss. Most of it, I think, was Anchor because he was in England and that was what was more readily available at the time. I think my grandma sold a bunch of it, and then at one point when I was in high school, I was visiting my grandma over in England, and she happened to like have found just like a random box that, you know, had gotten missed. And so I got it. I still use the box for my embroidery. It's kind of fun. I don't have it with me. It's like a handmade. It's clearly like someone like who wasn't specifically a carpenter went and had like, I have like spare bits of wool. I'm gonna hand make a box, or not spare bits of wool. Spare bits of wood. The box is made of wood. So it's like it's a handmade box. So it's kind of neat, and it had a bunch of like embroidery floss in it, and a whole bunch of different colors. And I feel like the colors were like wrapped on pieces of cardboard, and I feel like they probably had numbers on them, like on the pieces of cardboard, because like Grandpa was an embroiderer, so I don't know why he would get rid of the numbers if he was ever doing anything like from a pattern. But at the time I was 16 maybe, and I didn't really cross stitch. What I did a lot with embroidery floss was I did like sort of like those like macrame like friendship bracelets. I did a lot of that, and so that's what I think Grandma saw me making one, and that's why she pulled out the box and was like, here's a whole bunch of other like embroidery floss, you know, that you can use, and I'm not going to use it, and you know, feel free to take it. So I did, but at the time, I unwound all that floss from their pieces of cardboard, in order to make more things fit in the box, because I had to get the box from England to Canada in my suitcase, along with, Grandma gave me some other things, and there was like a jar of homemade jam, and there was like, aniseed balls, and like rock candy, and there was like, I think I had some books. Actually, no, I had a ton of books because my granddad had a whole bunch of books, which I took with me. So basically, I was trying to cram as much stuff as possible into the suitcase. I took them off their cardboard things, and those cardboard things are probably what had the labels on them for what color these were. So at the time, I didn't think they were important, so I took them off, and now no longer have labeled flosses. So these are all unlabeled, which makes them a whole lot harder to use. And, you know, adult me regrets, you know, high school me's decision, but what's done is done. And at least I know, roughly what color they are. Because even when I was in high school, when I took them off of their cardboard things, I sorted them into sort of like, okay, these ones are red, these ones are yellow, these ones are green, these ones are blue, these ones are pink. There's a lot of pink. I don't even like pink. Like, pink is like probably my least favorite color because it is confused. I don't like it. That probably needs explaining. Okay. You know, because I've been talking for however long I've been talking, I might as well keep talking, right? One of the things with me in colors is I see some colors, and the way it tends to work is I get cold colors mixed up and warm colors mixed up. So like warm colors like red, orange, yellow, pink are mostly warm colors. So I will get, you know, red and orange mixed up, or orange and yellow mixed up, or like pink and yellow, or pink and red. Cold colors are like green, blue, purple, gray. So I'll get like blue and green mixed up, or like blue and purple mixed up. Green and gray mixed up. Pink to me feels like a very confused color because I mix up pinks a lot. It tends to be like, I don't know, for some reason, pinks are really easy for me to mix up with like reds or oranges or yellows or browns. I have gotten all of those mixed up with pink before. Greens are also bad. I get greens mixed up with grays or blues very often. Greens come out looking gray very often unless they're like really vibrant. So I like vibrant greens. When I see green as green, I like it as a color, but I don't see green as green very often. But no, pink is a confused color. So I don't like pink very much because it doesn't very often stand out as its own color in the same way as the other colors do. Also, when I was in like grade 4, my mom dressed me in like nothing but pink. I had tracksuits. They were all pink. I just had like a score of pink tracksuits, I swear. Maybe not quite that many, but like most of my clothes were pink and I didn't like it. But apparently I looked really cute in pink. But so as a consequence, I just kind of like grew up being like, I hate pink. Pink is a terrible color. I don't like pink. I've gotten over a lot of my irrational dislike of pink from when I was a kid, but I don't like pink as much as other colors because it is, as I said, it's confused. It can't decide what color it wants to be. So that's that. But yeah, so that was Connie G's Rainbow Sal, which I'm thinking of doing on a gray fabric with probably blues and purples. I'm gonna see what colors I have in my other box and maybe see what blues and purples I have in like my DMC and Anchor. Sort of see which ones I have that are like a full skein, which I won't run out of, and or more than full skein for the border. I don't know how many skeins I'll need for the border. Probably, I don't know. I'll have to see. Some of the border is kind of big. And then I may or may not get out my blending filament because I now have 2 spools of silver blending filament and silver high luster silver and just normal silver blending filament from Kreinik, which I also got in my giant stitchquisition last weekend. And it might be kind of cool to do, not do the whole thing in blending filament because I don't hate myself that much, and it would probably be it would be over much, and I think it would ruin the effect. But I'm thinking it might be kind of fun to do some of either like some of the background or sort of like some of each of the motifs So make the motifs essentially look like they are sort of two colors instead of one. And so I'd have like one that was just the normal color and then one that was like the shiny silver plus color with the blending filament. And I think that would actually look really cool. And also I totally have blending filament to play with. So that is that. I'm really, really tempted to start Connie G's Rainbow Cell now because I can literally just pick things up and start it. I don't know what I'm gonna do. So I tell you my plans, but I don't know what I'm gonna do. I might start my desert bus tapestry, and start counting out and doing like the black outlines on the sprites, which I could do. I might start Connie G's Rainbow Cell in like blues and purples and blending filament because that would look awesome. Even though I'm 6 months behind, but that's okay, and it would be cool, so I might do that. Or I might continue on my dragon because I'm having lots of fun with him. He's super colorful and I love it. Or I could get out my Egyptian sampler again because I haven't worked on that in a couple weeks. And I also love it. So, I don't know. You guys. I'm gonna do something. I have no idea what it's gonna be. I don't know. I'm kind of leaning towards the Connie G cell because I thought of that today and I'm kind of still really excited about it. But I don't know. Well, you'll see next week. That's what I'm gonna do. It's gonna be a surprise. You'll see next week what happens. So speaking of, I have come to the end of everything I have to say, which is probably more than I thought I was going to say, but that's okay. We have had progress, we have had the tiniest of stitchquisitions, we have had plans for new starts, which may or may not happen, and a whole big story about the Child's Play and Desert Bus for Hope charity thing, which I will link below if you're interested in sort of checking them out, seeing what they're about. That'd be cool. If not, whatever. Yeah. And so that is everything. Thank you once again for your likes and comments. I appreciate them. I read all of my comments. I try to reply. I admit sometimes I don't reply because I just can't think of anything to say, but I will always give you a little heart to show you that I've read it because I appreciate and love all of my comments. It warms my heart. And you have super interesting things to say. So yeah, that's always super great. If you like what you've seen, feel free to subscribe. If you don't like what you've seen, feel free to dislike. Although, I mean, if you do, I'd love a comment as well to know what I've done wrong that, maybe I could do better because I'm always looking to improve. And yeah, I will see you next week. Bye!